Welcome to AI for Good, the leading, action-oriented, global and inclusive United Nations platform on AI. Organized by the International Telecommunication Union, the United Nations Agency for Digital Technologies, in partnership with 40+ UN sister organizations and co-convened with Switzerland. The goal of AI for Good is to identify innovative applications, build skills and standards, and advance partnerships to solve global challenges. In today's AI for Good event, we are counting on you to use the live video wall feature to ask questions and post comments to help create an engaging discussion. We encourage you to stay until the end to chat, connect, ask questions, and network with our distinguished facilitators and world-class AI experts in the neural network. It is now time to kick off the session and welcome our first speaker.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the ITU ILO AI for Good AI and Work series. I'm Janine Berg from the Research Department of the International Labor Organization, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's discussion. Today we have Anna Thomas from the Institute for the Future of Work in the United Kingdom, who will be presenting on good work in the age of AI. How can innovation and social good advance together? This is the culmination of a 3-year study undertaken by her institute in collaboration with other entities on the future of work, and basically studying how AI and other technological integration to the workplace has affected both employers and workers. So Anna Thomas is the founding co-director of the Institute for the Future of Work. She was formerly a barrister specializing in employment and equality law and was appointed a counsel to the Equality and Human Rights Commission. She was head of policy for the Labour Party's Future of Work Commission and is a fellow of the Institute for Policy Research and the Royal Society of Arts. Anna has advised the UK government as well as other organizations on AI governance. And in 2024, she was awarded an MBE for her services to research on the future of work. So Anna, thank you so much for joining us. It's my pleasure to have you here, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Janine, for having me. I'm really delighted to be able to share some of our recent work and thinking with you and the ILO at this critical juncture, really, in understanding and thinking and practicing, to say nothing of governing AI and indeed work. I'm particularly pleased to be doing this in partnership with the ILO, since our work has really been about and to advance the human-centered agenda, the agenda of developing a human-centered, really human-centered AI for good, as this series promotes, a concept which has arguably drifted and been confused. We hope at the Institute for the Future of Work to help re-establish the case and develop the case for a human-centered agenda in which work, and in particular good work, is forefronted, and to show why and begin to explain how this might be done at different levels. In doing so, we develop what we are describing a new model of automation, and we are reframing automation to promote and advance this goal, and at the same time going meta. Our work, we hope, goes to show why the future of work and automation should themselves be seen as increasingly important and cross-cutting policy areas. We are based in the UK. If we could move through the slides now, that would be great. Working at the intersection of government, academia, and civil society and industry. But we are increasingly engaging on a global basis, and we invite you, for the purposes of this talk and discussion, to consider the UK as a case study and as a model for progressive policy, which could be of use to the world and others. And with that in mind, I'm keen to share key insight from the Pissarides, the Future of Work and Wellbeing. This is a 3-year collaboration between academics, unions and industry, with Professor Sir Christopher Pissarides as the PI of the case. And to sort of cut a long story short and go straight to the conclusion, what we propose is a socio-technical perspective in terms of both research, practice, and policy through the central and mediating role of good work through transition. Moving on, please, that would be great. I will start by going back to basics. In a sense, it's not needed for this audience, but we're finding increasingly it is important as a recap, and to think about work is important, not only for its own sake, but also to be a lens on what's happening and an incubator sometimes about how to respond to and deal with wider challenges and impacts. So work is a source of both social contact, relationships, purpose, material benefits, and non-material benefits. And it is, in a sense, a golden thread that connects individual experience with society and the economy as a whole, and runs through individual lives and communities. Reflecting this, it's a reminder that workers are also often interacting with technology with different hats on, as our firms, as consumers, and as citizens, as well as a worker. We know that automation technologies are already having profound dynamic impacts at multiple levels. At the individual level, we're finding that they automate, they transfer, they intensify work tasks, and we're going to come back to that. At a firm level, they are sometimes triggering and enabling new types of business models and the creation of value. And at a system level, they are rewiring labour markets and shaping the creation of jobs and the distribution of jobs, as well as access to them. We're finding these things are happening together and that they relate, and that it is important to understand and look at all of them to get a more holistic and systematic view of both what's happening now and what could happen in the future. Another background point, there is a lot of increasing attention on frontier AI models such as LLMs. And we do think that these are likely to expedite many of these changes, and that is already being shown up. The availability and increasing capabilities and applications, creative applications of these models, the deployment of their models within broader software architectures, and a shift in the layer of abstraction, as well as the data sources that are being taken into account, is leading to new types and combinations of automation. So our general approach is very much evidence driven. It's to deploy the best possible evidence, multidisciplinary, looking at all levels, to anticipate and understand and share what we know now, and to build systems for anticipating and responding to what is only going to be revealed with time and may happen in the future, and some of which we can't know. What do we mean by automation? Automation has historically been widely understood to reflect the ability of technology to replace labour in tasks it was previously engaged in. We've been grappling with this and expanding and reframing automation for some time now, but it has stuck. Our experience and those of our partners is that this original conception of substitution and replacement, initially of jobs and then in tasks, has stuck as the most commonly imagined automation risk, and also the focus often of practitioners and policymakers in managing transitions. Our work suggests, and we believe, that a wider and heuristic and framing for automation is what is needed. We don't suggest that this is a magical answer or includes all possible impacts or types of automation, but we are able to organise many of the automation types, all of which come with different impacts to work quality, and other areas. into categories. In these automation types, displacement in particular of tasks is often a factor. It usually is. But at the same time, we are taking into account and learning about task and job creation, the ability of AI to both increase or decrease the discretion of humans as they perform their work, matching the ability of matching both of humans to jobs, of tasks, and internally within tasks and between occupations and firms. We begin to conceive of matching in a systematic way, which includes a range of different matches. And AI can be used both to understand that and to enable that in a better way. Telepresence is when there is the most obvious example of that is remote work, when the person doing it is detached physically from the job, and it can be done in a range of different ways and occupations. Intensification is another approach to value creation, whereby the number of tasks and the rate of tasks is increased, often incrementally, often by systems, including AI systems, that will guide or nudge that in ways that can be difficult to understand. So all of these different combinations, multiple effects on work, including all aspects of work quality, conditions and the nature of work. And the big message from all our work is that that it's very variable and that they are not evenly distributed. Again, a forerunner, perhaps this slide should be at the end, the outcomes of technology are not predetermined. All our work at all levels, which we'll go into in a little bit more detail in a minute, show that they are shaped by policy choices, that the way in which jobs are created, that the technologies are designed, deployed, and monitored, the wider policy choices, the firm level choices, will determine the outcomes. And it's very important that we are highly aware of this at this moment in time, and that we don't assume that any particular pathway, in particular with regard to substitution and augmentation, intensification and the other types of automation, are inevitable. It is still within our gift and more than our gift to shape it. And that's, of course, what we should do to mediate and enable the best outcomes for humans. Next slide, please. So with this in mind, the Pissarides review examined individual, firm and system level impacts in a multidisciplinary way, and then considered the relationship of those impacts to each other and the way that individual impacts were linked to firm level impacts and decisions, which were linked to system level policy and decisions. In an overall way, we concluded that the only way to understand this and bottom this out was to combine this approach. Without that, it is impossible, we think, to understand both what's happening now and future pathways. And we risk missing out significant impacts and failing to identify significant opportunities for prosperity and also for well-being. At an individual level, some key facts from our surveys, which was 5,000 surveys, that the variation in impacts, including employees' quality of life, correlated with workplace tech. Quality of life correlates with quality of employment. A key point, I think, for this series is that the quality of life was negatively correlated with frequency of interaction to newer workplace technologies, such as and including AI. So the assumption that that's good needs to be unpicked. At a firm level, we did case level surveys, but also a firm level survey of 1,000 firms in the UK of differing sizes. We found that perceptions and in particular, high involvement human resource management was key in mediating better outcomes. We also found, by cross-referencing the firm level survey to our disruption index, which we'll come to in a second, that institutional support and environment was particularly important. And at a system level, we created a disruption index to map out technological disruption across the UK. And the goal in doing that was to understand the innovation system in which jobs are created and shaped. We're starting with our systems level research here. The disruption index tracked technological disruption across 2 dimensions and included readiness, allowing us to understand and put together the job life cycle and the technology life cycle and the career life cycle in ways that are new. Next slide, please. So we mirrored our socio-technical approach by combining technical indicators, including those that go right up and down the value chain, the technology life cycle, from investments, from the research and expenditure and innovation activity, to patents at the other end, how they were being applied. And in terms of the human factors, to look at educational achievement, and investment in particular in education and workforce training and infrastructure that was available. That was our approach. Again, we think that these findings may be useful outside the UK. Something that we found that was striking was that where in the UK we are aware of regional disparities, we were not aware in the same way of not just skewed distributions of one dimension in tech transformation investment, but skewed distributions of R&D expenditure and patents and other indicators too. So all those foundational aspects, those functions of the innovation system, which create and sustain good jobs and good quality jobs. So we think that this is a reminder, not just to see things holistically, to I think about those functions that make up the innovation system, but also in terms of thinking about and responding to inequalities and the potential downsides as well as the upsides of AI and technology adoption, to bear in mind that inequalities across the innovation system are going to compound, so that the trajectories are likely to be reinforced without positive policy interventions. The concentration of high-tech investments into a small area of geography is pronounced in the UK. And interestingly, and I suspect this is mirrored in countries other than the UK, does not reflect innovation readiness. So in other words, certainly in the UK, that the readiness, the combination of factors that represented the readiness of the UK did not reflect what was then actually transformed, meaning that opportunities were not yet being identified or grasped, meaning that there are opportunities, local talents and capabilities and skills that need to be identified and tapped, both for the sake of individuals and also for firms at a national level. As part of the disruption index, as one of the indicators, but then doing a deep dive into it, we analysed job vacancies per month, encompassing 3,500 different skills, and identified a set of core skills as well as a set of rapidly emerging and disappearing skills. The results did, like as other global reports, including from the ILO, have highlighted, flag the increasing and sustained importance of communication skills, critical thinking, and creativity. But in particular, it highlighted the combinations, the increasing need for combined tech and socio skills, even within the tech sector in senior jobs as well. And it was able to help us identify core skills and transitional skills. So in a sense, thinking about skills as a window into understanding, anticipating, and shaping job change. AI is therefore leading to a rapid evolution of the skills landscape in the UK, as it will be elsewhere, with significant variations. And our work suggests this deeper analysis of skills with a view to pulling out core skills and transitional skills, and refocusing on combined social and technical skills is a good thing to do in terms of both policy and at a firm level. This slide gives a little bit more information on that. We were also able to look at the relationship between the skills, pointing to something that we saw across the review, which is the importance of considering relationship between the task, the skills, the technology, and the relationship between, in here, skills networks, concurrent skills, and kind of spillover in skills. So thinking about that in terms of jobs, somebody's skills has changed. It may well have an effect on somebody else's skills. And we may also be able to spot what that relationship is, and what's most likely or could, with the right support, happen in the future. The speed of change at a city level and a place-based level was very high indeed. Our firm level survey and case studies homed in on the rationale and basis and adoption of AI and the consequences for work and job, done in conjunction with Warwick Business School, one of our partners in the Pissarides review, led by Professor James Hayton. The place-based factors were outstanding in this work stream, finding that companies were more likely to adopt AI in a way that supports good work where innovation readiness is high, and that local and regional factors were particularly important. We also found that high involvement practice and participation mediated good outcomes, and that can be captured and summarized by thinking about good work. So good work here would be a mediator of better outcomes as well as a social value. It's a way of maximizing opportunities and minimizing risks, of cutting through the noise and focusing on the most important things, the most important impact points. And this goes at a firm level as well as at an individual level, and a systems level. In this sense, it aligns different interests. So in particular, we found that better outcomes for firms required higher levels of information and involvement to enable a context-sensitive approach, dynamic, reflexive approach to AI adoption, which could surface new information and involve workers and the workforce in the process of technology adoption, which doubled up as not just surfacing new information, but identifying new areas for innovation, and identifying and managing risks at the same time. A key takeaway from this work stream in particular was that good governance and responsible innovation really do go together. So this is an area where institutionally we're moving towards, and we expect that to happen on the international scene too. At an individual level, our individual work, our firm, our individual survey of 5,000 employees and 12 focus groups really explored the impacts on work and job quality. The evidence of job quality changes due to technology based on responses to that was highly variable. There were a lot of good things that came out of it: opportunities to learn new things, the flexibility to choose my work location, opportunities to interact and communicate with people I work with, opportunities to apply my own ideas. But these were often happening in a way that was concurrent and had to be traded off and understood in a very individual, context-sensitive, occupational-based way, with less favourable and negative impacts, which included, in particular, concern about the amount of surveillance over work, lack of control or frequency of unsociable hours and boundaries in like weekends and nights, and fear and concern about the chances of losing job or becoming unemployed. So these point to a very nuanced picture, which require really some degree of participation and involvement to surface this and to manage and make these trade-offs in the best possible way. We uncovered a significant variation in employees' quality of life too, driven by AI exposure, which really highlighted the point that we spoke to about at the beginning, that it's not an automatic answer. We can't expect that the good stuff, the improvements, will happen. They do have to be consciously identified and managed. So in particular, digital information and communication technologies did correlate with improved quality of life, whereas newer technologies did not. This is not a message that is widely understood, or perhaps it's easier not to, but one that does, we think, need significant attention, both in terms of practice and developing best practice, but also in terms of policy and governance. In terms of institutional and support structures, we did do an analysis of those in the United Kingdom, and found, as that there will be the case worldwide, that they were very disparate, and often the agencies that were responsible for aspects of it were not always working together with a clear, aligned mission. Although the new government in the UK and the mission-driven government in the UK and the establishment of new institutions is an opportunity to really reflect on that and align the way that the institutions are working together, quite possibly, we think, around the concept and principles of good work. What we did in terms of institutional support structures and thinking about them, both strengths and weaknesses, was promote and practice ourselves a capabilities approach in the context of innovation. What we were doing, and indeed a focus on good work, helps combine capabilities with an innovation approach through this medium, through this mediator of good work, in a way that will allow them both to work together, that will deliver better and more sustainable outcomes, align interests, and set us up for responding to what's coming next. So in a sense, from a global point of view, that's thinking about combining the capabilities-based approach, for which the Nordic countries are perhaps best known, with an innovation approach for which the US is known, and refocusing on good work as a way of potentially combining or bridging those, and providing an opportunity structure and practice to deliver this, and a better way, a more and not just an accurate way, but a more human-centered way of anticipating and responding to risks. One which also triangulates key pieces of information and sources of information. So the policy implications, thank you very much, Jenny, you're doing a brilliant job in the slides. Going back then, pulling that all together and thinking what it's doing for our model of automation, and our socio-technical relational approach to automation and AI, we are conceiving of both changes within a job, task, capabilities, skills and technologies, within a firm, and positioning that in the innovation ecosystem in a way that we've reflected in this diagram. So in this sense, the job is like a cell, is like the cell of a body, the firm is like a body, and the wider functions and structures are the environment in which we live, a social environment, the social economic environment in which we are living. And by thinking about it in this systematic way, we are able then to isolate functions and structures that need attention, that are enablers, that can help us identify and overcome frictions, and anticipate possibilities, as well as manage risks, in order to proactively shape a better future in which humans and human capabilities are central. Thinking about policy, I think, requires us to think about good work, not only in terms of labour market protection and employment protection, or even equality and data protection, but also other areas, other domains of policy, such as examples in the UK, the Digital Markets and Competition Bill, or the devolution bill that we're about to have, or the AI bill that we're about to have, or the data protection, as well as the employment bill. These are bills that all have done, are, or are about to pass through the UK Parliament. So taking insight from the review and thinking about this role of good work as a mediator, as a way of focusing on the most important access points, impact points, and delivering better outcomes and aligning different types of interest. There is, we think, a good case for doing a kind of assessment, a good work impact assessment, in the same way that equality impact assessments are done through these legislations, so that we are anticipating what impact it will have on creating, transitioning, or sustaining good jobs. This is the way we think to deliver the worker-centred or people-centred approach, in which expertise, human values, and interpretation are placed at the forefront. So work here and people here being a key site and forum, as well as a lens for bottoming this out and responding to the structural transformation which is happening at the moment, whether or not we describe it as the fourth or fifth industrial revolution. So in particular, our work highlights the value within the good work domain of participation and involvement, of information and consultation, in order that the challenges can both be understood and then directed, and that's happening at an individual, firm, and assistance level. As an overarching approach to both policy and practice, we're suggesting that involvement of those stakeholders who are affected is key, involving them in anticipating workers, business and technologies, the tripartite approach that the ILO represents and delivers, mitigating together, working out what can be done in terms of adjustment, responses, policies and safeguards, be it something that is internal to the technology, something that is ancillary to it, that is some support, or some wider policy support intervention that is needed, and then setting up a systematic system for monitoring what's happening, allowing for these feedback processes in terms of the individual, the management, and also the firm and the tripartite approach to government. A recap of our Good Work Charter, which reflects work from the ILO and international work done on decent work, supports a new socio-economic paradigm of good work or good jobs in the context of technological transformation to enable good transitions at different levels. In particular for this series, I think it's worth thinking about good work and the good work principles and charter and framework as a way of translating AI, international AI principles in a practical ways to the workplace. And so that is our framework. Very happy to talk about it more, or do go to our website for more information on it. Again, as a sort of quick wrapping up and utilising the insight from the Pissarides review, our kind of impact assessment, which helps in a very practical, tangible ways at a firm level, as well as at a policy level and individual level, firms that think about the delivery of good work in their firm. We have a sort of a system, a framework, which we're exploring, and we have a sandbox as well as other projects that are up and beginning to get up and running now to support this and enable this and help assess impacts on each dimension of the good work framework through the course of technology adoption. Key takeaways. So we've heard that they're all relational. This is really important, we think, that a systematic approach at a firm level as well as a policy level and a sort of job level is really important to be conscious of relational, cumulative, hidden spillover effects and put together insight with combining quant and qual at different levels, as we've seen. We do think we're way past the age where one figure, one numerical estimate can capture automation in a meaningful way. This is the systematic. This is living the socio-technical approach to research, policy, and practice. It's really important that we think that we remember and reflect on the fact that it's not automatically positive. It has huge potential to be good for firms as well as for countries, but we must take into consideration impacts that are not necessarily positive, and we mustn't assume the positive side of things without setting up these systems to monitor and respond, and in a very case-specific way, consider these trade-offs in a way that brings the workforce along with the transition and maximizes good outcomes. So this is the way we think this focus and this paradigm on good work, we can perhaps reflecting and developing early work from the Future of Work programme at the ILO, a better transition. So delivering, as this series is called, AI for good.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna. That was absolutely great. It's such a rich study for the past 3 years. I have been reading some of the case studies that have been published during that period, and also your final report. And I would highly recommend everyone to take a look at their website and the rich publications that are there. So I just have a few questions, and then we'll take some questions from the floor. There's so many different aspects of the work that you've done, so I just want to touch on a few of them. So one thing, and I think this is particularly of interest to many countries, is about the geographic inequalities that you found in the UK with respect to investment. So it's really interesting how you found, for example, that in some parts of the UK, there might have been enough sufficient skill readiness, but on the demand side, it wasn't compatible in a way that it led to local innovation system bottlenecks. So knowing this, and given that this is a UK study, what do you feel is the best way to approach these deficits?
And that's a really great question. I'll try and answer in a higher level way that may be more relevant to your audience, your global audience. We do think that putting together different data sources and making that available to at different levels is super important. So doing in a way reflecting what we've tried to do and begun to do with the Pissarides review. So putting together geographic data, health data, work data, skills data at a very local level. So thinking about that in terms of local observatories, and then again, broad brush, the promotion of devolution and local approaches to this, we feel are most likely to be effective. We're lucky in the UK that we're about to enter a period of further devolution, so we will be able to respond to it. So it's really, I suppose, that the foundational and functional things that will allow this systematic approach and enable local responses to identify strengths and weaknesses and deploy the AI for good in a way that will respond to those particular challenges and aspirations.
So just to follow up on that, do you think then, for example, one of your indicators is about venture capital and how there's like a lack of venture capital investment in some parts of the UK. Do you think there's a policy need then to steer venture capital into some of these areas that aren't receiving it?
Yeah, I mean, we have made some policy recommendations which would be designed to steer that or highlight gaps because of this work. This works for different reasons, and there are also opportunities. We've surfaced problems, but it also means that there are untapped opportunities. So from a sort of policy point of view, we do suggest that research and development pays more attention to the entire range of research and development, including practical applications, and that in all likelihood, devolution will include some aspect of that. We should enter into a period now of experimenting with that and mapping the results, but directing it to fill these gaps, and also in terms of overarching direction to focus on, in particular, we think high discretion augmentation in both researching and developing that, so we escape these age-old assumptions about substitution is the way to go. Again, we feel that this may be helpful outside the UK too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so I think the main findings of your work has been about dispelling these two myths. So the first myth about technology being labor saving, and the second myth about augmenting job leads to upskilling and job quality improvements. I think this is a really important. These are two important myths that are really important to dispel. You then argue that reliance on these false assumptions is leading to a lack of attention to the true conditions which are required for productivity benefits to be realized. Could you elaborate a bit more on what you mean here and how our attention should be focused?
You may have seen that some of the recommendations, which were called policy, were really about framing and understanding and shifting, having a major reorientation in terms of our approach to it towards the human capabilities, and in particular promoting and enabling those, in particular the discretion, but also thinking more precisely and setting up mechanisms for thinking about how those related to the technology. So kind of like a deeper dive with a mission in place into sort of human-centered design and innovation. And a big shift is needed because we think, because at the moment all the focus is on tech capabilities, And that tells us so much, but it doesn't really focus about not just the interaction, but the augmentation and the discretion part of that, which we feel is critical.
So getting in a little bit more on the case studies and the firm studies that you did, the study highlights the importance of HR management in fostering employee capabilities. It finds that unions and other representative structures are important, but that more importantly was really well-designed HR policies. So do you have any examples that you can give from your case studies on what were some of these well-designed HR policies? What does it really consist of? If a firm does want to, is going to be implementing these investments, what really should they be doing in terms of HR to make sure that it's successful?
That's another good question. We are currently working with the CIPD on this, so thinking about adoption of AI, and the work that we've done, the research we've done, which is action research, should we hope inform standards about HR. We do think that there could be targeted policies to promote high involvement practice or certain types of incentive, and as that relates to technology, that we could be smarter about that. And we do think that there should be training initiatives and functional support specifically for high involvement management. So that, whereas that isn't something that is we don't always see it. It's not very common. I think that applies worldwide as well. So by reorienting on this particular type of practice and combining that with not just kind of institutional support, but conceivably governance as well, and to do with eliciting the right amount of information to enable that, and structures to promote higher levels of participation, will be important.
Great. So at the ILO, we've always been trying to make the message clear that the importance of social dialogue at the workplace, and to the extent that you can actually involve workers, consult with workers, and one step forward, as done in many of the Nordic countries, participatory design when it comes to actually designing and integrating the the technological systems in the workplace is something really important, and certainly something that would need to be managed by HR. So reading the final report, I did notice that there were some areas of automated technologies that didn't seem to be addressed in the 3-year study, and perhaps I'm mistaken. One of them was about the use of AI in functions such as recruitment and performance management. Did you come across any of that in the case studies, or if you didn't, do you have any reflection on these issues and how policymakers should address them?
They were peripheral, I think, for the case studies, but you're right that there wasn't a case study specifically on recruitment, although that has been a focus area. So we have reflected on the importance of matching. So I suppose, in a sense, the frictions frame of Chris Pissarides was about matching. So in a sense, the entire review is about better matching of individuals to jobs. The utilization of AI for the purpose of this is, we think, an important area for both policy and practice, and we know that the DWP in the UK are beginning pilots about that and thinking about that. So I think at a firm level we didn't, but our findings about matching, and in particular better matching of what was available and what was likely to happen in the future, so sort of future jobs, to not just skills as they are identified by a firm at a moment in time, but ways of bottoming out future skills and capabilities, what somebody is capable of in the future, as well as what is assessed in a snapshot way by an employer at a point in time, is a direction that is highly applicable to firms as well as at a policy level.
Great. Okay, so what is the advice you're giving, or what is the advice you would give to the UK or other governments on how to adopt AI in a way that supports prosperity and worker well-being? What's your
we have hundreds of recommendations on the report on this area, but I guess to pick out a few that we feel are that are perhaps particularly important, since I can't run through 100 or 200 recommendations, we would say that this refocusing of research right the way through the innovation system on the likelihood or the likelihood of creating, sustaining, or impact on work in a systematic way, from research, from functions in the innovation system to individual pieces of legislation as they go through Parliament, is really, really important. At a sort of smaller scale way, the Employment Rights Bill in the UK is going through now, and and in many ways it's great, and it's staged now, so it'll be introduced and consulted on over time, which is also great. We do feel that signifying amendments, and not just signifying, amendments that go to the root of this, which will elicit higher levels of information about technology adoption and likely impacts, in order that individuals can respond. So the kind of information and consultation aspect of it could be improved. So that putting in to boosting those parts of it and aligning that with the data protection bill, and in particular perhaps building in a light touch way of what we've been talking about today, and what the Good Work Algorithmic Impacts Assessment is, to encourage all stakeholders to do their bit, whatever they can, in their kind of, in the technology or the job life cycle, to anticipate their impacts, maximize the good and minimize the risks, is a really good way to go. And I suppose that also fits in with what we have said about AI regulation more widely, which is that we do feel that the UK is well placed potentially to develop a global model of principles-based AI regulation, which could bears in mind the fact that the Good Work Charter reflects AI principles, but it wouldn't start with that, because and that this could be an overarching frame, that is consistent with the directions that are happening internationally, and may bridge between very different perspectives at the moment, and again would capture that in regulation, and could be mirrored internationally, and that the advantages of that in terms of steering certainty and steering this right course, and first mover advantage, frankly, and ensuring that risks and opportunities, in particular those on work, were built in, would be a good thing to do.
Okay, great. So we have a few questions from the floor here. So one is from, IT occupations are on top of the list with largest demand for new skills and the largest bar for old skills. Could you talk a bit about more the changes you see in this sector induced by AI? Is this transformation different to other sectors exposed to AI, such as administrative jobs?
So which is the sector that is at the...
They're talking about IT jobs. So IT jobs are on the one hand, you have a lot of skills that are getting obsolete very quickly, but then a lot of skills that need to be added. Given what's happening here and what you learned from your survey of the skill demands, do you have any insights?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's worth looking at the report for details, but something that I can remember straight away because it stuck out, it stood out to me, was that even in the IT sector, where you might make different assumptions about the mix of skills that you need, the socio-technical mix of skills was becoming more pronounced rather than less pronounced. So within the IT sector, this ability, the humans, ordinarily by economists described as softer skills, were actually, contrary to what one might imagine in the new age of AI, becoming more and more important, even in IT. So that's something that I can remember without looking at the report. But also I would like to highlight the huge variation that there was in cities and geographies across the country among all these changes. And so we do think that perhaps the place-based approach to thinking about impacts, both in terms of untapped potential and risk, demands increased attention, and that would apply to IT and in the UK and outside the UK too.
Great. Did you have any examples of case studies that were done in regions of the UK that, let's say, were scored less on your innovation or had more innovation system bottlenecks, but nonetheless that there were some case studies of some shining lights there of that worked well? And maybe what are some of the lessons that were drawn from some of those case studies?
We began, with the case studies that we did at a firm level were across the country. So, for example, we worked with NHS Warwick to think about the application of AI and robotic technologies for surgeons coming out of certain types of in operation, and found some very interesting findings about how that didn't solve staff shortages or interoperability and spillover effects. In terms of the innovation system, if it's both angles or other place-based work, that was more theoretical. That was through the lens of the disruption index. But the case studies in that the disruption index was able to identify bottlenecks in kind of regional innovation systems where things weren't coming together. So thinking about it in terms of career pathways, because that's an easy way to access it, there may be the human resources in there, or even conceivably apprenticeship where there are issues there, but nothing to go through to, or you may lose people post-university because there isn't a trajectory through. So obviously what you want is investment in sectors and technologies directed locally, and then research development training for those, and then an entire career trajectory there. What the disruption began to allow us to do was pinpoint where that was going wrong. So although it doesn't substitute for these sort of wider, more holistic policy responses at a national level, or even the sort of promoting devolution, it did allow, once you got to higher levels of devolution, the combined authority or the local authority to put their finger on an area or identify an area that might need particular attention and be neglected for whatever reason, a range of reasons. And yes, we did find that in several cases across the UK, often in terms of certain types of investment or opportunity, or certain times of training or opportunity. So often it was I think, about the sustaining of the job and the career trajectory, which could make a huge difference if we get that right in the UK. And I hope that lesson is one that applies elsewhere too.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're out of time now. Thank you so much for joining us. And really, I invite everybody to go to their website and to read all of the excellent material that's there. There's definitely a lot of material here that can be helpful for all of our work. And I really appreciate you joining us. So have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you for participating in today's AI for Good session. We hope you've learnt something new, innovative, and engaging in today's event. We now encourage you to continue the conversation on the live video wall in the neural network. Here you can ask questions, like and comment, share links, complete the poll, connect with interesting profiles, or speak one-on-one using the chat and video function. We invite you to explore the lobby, try the smart matching quiz, visit the virtual exhibits, poster boards, the e-shop, and build your personalized AI for Good program. Let's shape the future of AI for good.